So Mimo rented a room for him and suggested he offer his tutoring services to other Irani lads like Behramji who might also be interested in learning Persian. But this too Merwan refused to do. Mimo then threatened to stop Behramji from visiting the house. Indifferently, Merwan consented. All right, do it if you like. At his lack of concern, Mimo could only throw up her hands in exasperation, wondering what had happened to the son she always referred to unabashedly as her most beautiful child. Mirwan instructed Behramji to come to his room every day to be tutored in Persian, and nothing made Behramji happier than these daily visits. Behramji would not even let his business affairs interfere. Due entirely to Mirwan's efforts, within 4 months, Behramji went from being completely illiterate to reading the poetry of Hafiz. Gradually, Mirwan also began conversing with Behramji about God, the inner path, the need for a guru, and other spiritual issues. Behramji was deeply interested and respected Mirwan's views about spiritual matters. The two became close and would leave Pune together, visiting different places for several days at a time without informing anyone. On the return, when asked where they had been, Mirwan would reply, on a pilgrimage in search of saints. In April 1915, Mirwan told Behramji, I am going away on a long and arduous journey. I may not be back for a long time. I have decided to lead a life of fakiri, renunciation, and ascetic austerities. You may not hear from me for a long time, but if I should write you to come to me, you should immediately join me wherever I am. Behramji was taken aback because he wished to accompany Merwan wherever he was going. Disappointed, but influenced by what Merwan had revealed to him about spirituality, Behramji promised. That same night, Merwan boarded a train. He had bought a ticket to Raichur in the south of India, but the echo of the song, the divine voice within, compelled him to get off the train at the remote village of Kedgaon, just 30 miles from Pune. There he inquired as to the whereabouts of Narayan Maharaj's ashram and walked the 7 miles from the railway station to the Sadguru's headquarters. Merwan crossed a small stream and entered the grounds through a large gate passing by the temple dedicated to Dattatreya. He inquired where is Narayan Maharaj. He is at his palace, a caretaker replied. Darshan is being held. Go, Narayan is giving his blessings. A large crowd was in the palace and Narayan Maharaj, wearing a gold crown, was seated on his gadi, lounge seat. Upon seeing Merwan, Narayan immediately stopped darshan and had his devotees disperse. He came down from his seat and, taking Merwan by the hand, gently led him up a few steps and motioned for him to sit upon his gadi. Narayan removed a flower garland from his own shoulders, placed it around Merwan's neck, and called for mango juice, which was given to Merwan to drink. Merwan and Narayan then talked together for a while, although what they conversed about is not known. Narayan Maharaj then granted Merwan permission to leave. Merwan walked back to the station and finding a train about to leave, boarded it and was back in Pune in less than 24 hours. Upon seeing him, Behramji was surprised, for he had not expected to see his friend again for several months. Age observed Narayan Maharaj's deep love for Merwan, but it wondered other Sadgurus had to pass through the fires of hell to gain consciousness of the divine state. The realization of God reduced him to ashes within and without. Yet Merwan does not seem to be suffering the same way. Is it because he himself is beloved God? The five perfect masters had drawn a veil over Merwan for 19 years to hide his divine identity and to protect him until the time was right. Then Baba Jan had lifted the veil. Unlike with other advanced souls, It was not the veil of ignorance that covered Merwan's sight, but only a momentary Vijnani veil concealing his true glory. This veil is comprised of Vijnani sanskaras that by substance or nature do not bind. Circle members of the avatar and perfect masters also have such Vijnani sanskaras, but their sanskaras are different in function. The avatars with Jnani Sanskaras are there for forming an individual human identity and as protection so he may grow and develop into a mature man. The Vijnani Sanskaras of circle members, Mandali, have to do with the perfect masters or the avatar's universal work. Thus, Age knew that Merwan was the one whom it had been longing to see. The beloved for whom humanity had been waiting for hundreds of years. Through his contact with Narayan Maharaj, Mirwan was now beginning to feel the glory of his godhood. He was still dazzled by the glorious light and bliss, but now his own light and bliss would begin to dazzle others. Following his contact with Narayan Maharaj, after some days in Pune, Mirwan told Behramji, Latus, and Belly, "Come with me. I'm going to meet certain very great saints. They all are holy men who belong to God." Merwan, with his three close friends, went to Bombay first. There they met a man called Tipu Baba, who was a god intoxicated must of high order, the sixth plane, and was the spiritual charge man of Bombay. Tipu Baba had inherited his spiritual charge from Baba Abdur or Abdul Rahman, who was a Mohammedan perfect master in Bombay before Merwan was born, and who dropped his body circa 27 December 1916. His tomb is located in Dongri, Bombay. After taking Tipu Baba's darshan, Merwan and his companions left Bombay the same night for Aurangabad, famous for the Ellora caves and the tombs of many saints. There they met a mazhoob of the seventh plane named Bane Mia Baba, who was considered a great saint by the local people and who had a close connection with Sai Baba of Shirdi. It was Sai Baba who had given God realization to Bane Mia Baba and stationed him in Aurangabad. Merwan sent Latus and Beli back to Pune and then took a train to Nagpur with Behramji via a circuitous route to meet the third perfect master of the age, Tajuddin Baba. At Nagpur, they inquired of Tajuddin Baba's whereabouts and were informed that they should take a tonga to the town of Waki Sharif, some 10 miles away, where they would find Tajuddin. Accordingly, seated in a horse-drawn tonga, they rode to meet Tajuddin Baba, the most renowned living saint in central India. There was a large gathering of devotees around the Sadguru, and all were concerned as Tajuddin was in an ill-tempered, fiery mood. He had been venting his fury on those around him, abusing everyone who came for his darshan that day. When they had arrived at Tajuddin's ashram, Merwan and Behramji were informed that this is not a good day to see Tajuddin. The master is in a foul mood. If you enter, be prepared to be rebuked. Merwan looked at the person and then smiled knowingly. "He is waiting for me," Merwan stated. "Tajuddin has been waiting for me to arrive." Merwan and Behramji walked through the grounds to where Tajuddin Baba was seated. Tajuddin, a balding grey-haired man, was dressed simply. Merwan took the lead as they approached the Kutub, who was seated with a few flowers in his lap. To everyone's surprise, Tajuddin Baba became silent, stood up, and started walking toward Merwan. Their eyes met and their gaze locked. Who knows what divine inner messages were exchanged? Tajuddin presented Merwan with the flowers and rubbed Merwan's head affectionately, as a father would his son. No words were spoken. There are no words to the divine song. The singer tells the story in the language of song which only he and those who have heard it can understand. The silent conversation between Merwan and Tajuddin Baba was of such awesome depth that Age's heart was overpowered. Age knew that it was witnessing a meeting between the ocean and the sky. Tajuddin seemed overcome with happiness as he gazed upon Mirwan. Silently, in the stillness of the crowd, Mirwan and Behramji slipped away, went straight back to the train station, and boarded the first train back to Pune. None knew what had happened between Tajuddin and the young Irani from Pune. Mirwan had received his crown. Upon returning to Pune, Mirwan resumed a close association with another of his childhood friends, Khodu, with whom he had attended Pune Camp School. Khodu was then 25, a few years older than Mirwan. He was not a particularly clever fellow, but he was a strong man with a powerful physique. Although Khodu was unaware of Mirwan's spiritual state, he loved him and considered Mirwan to be his only real friend in the world. Khodu affectionately referred to Mirwan as his Langoti dost, diaper buddy, meaning a childhood pal or chum. Khodu always acted in an informal manner whenever he was with Mirwan, and naturally Mirwan did the same. Once Mirwan went to visit Khodu, but he was not at home. Khodu's wife Naja asked Mirwan to wait, and he requested some food. Naja served Mirwan a meal, which he ate ravenously. After eating, he was about to leave when Khodu arrived, and seeing his friend, grabbed him in a welcoming bear hug. Mirwan warned him, Khodu, don't hold me like this. I'm no longer that Mirwan. Thinking he was joking, Khodu retorted, if you're not that Mirwan, then who the hell are you? I will see who this Mirwan is. Being much taller and stronger than Mirwan, who was very slender, Khodu thought he would easily overpower his friend and hurl him to the floor. But the result was not what he expected and proved to be one of the greatest lessons of his life. Khodu lunged for Mirwan's arm, but Mirwan stretched out his hand to prevent him, and with a slight show sent Khodu reeling back, knocking him to the floor. Khodu was both shocked and amazed by Mirwan's strength. Mirwan was not angry and good naturedly helped Khodu to his feet. Both sat down and started talking. Khodu immediately realized that Mirwan was no longer an ordinary man, and he began to look upon him with renewed and greater respect. When I looked into Mirwan's eyes, Khodu said later, I knew I had lost a friend, but I had found a saint. After this incident, Khodu and Mirwan started seeing each other more regularly. Mirwan told Khodu about Baba Jan, and Khodu was deeply impressed, accompanying Mirwan whenever he went to see her. Hour upon hour, they would sit by Baba Jan's side, late into the night, returning to Khodu's house as late as 4 o'clock in the morning. Often they would discuss the significance of the Qawwali singing they had heard that night at Baba Jan's. After a few months, Baba Jan began repeating to Mirwan, my son, the treasure which you seek and the key to that treasure are not with me. I cannot give it to you. The treasure is yours. It is for you alone. There is no doubt about that. But you must have the key. Baba Jan would always speak about this in a cryptic fashion. Then late one night, she spoke in a very clear manner. The treasure is yours to have now. The key is there. Go to Shirdi. There is a Sai, a holy one there. Go see the Sai. See if he will give you the key. One day Mirwan told Khodu, for the past several months, I have had a terrible pain in my stomach and it won't go away. I don't know what to do about it. Khodu had heard of the miracles surrounding Sai Baba, and remembering what Baba Jan had recently told Mirwan, said, "My friend, if you come with me to Sai Baba, perhaps your pain will disappear. I have heard that he has cured every type of affliction. Miracles are an everyday occurrence at Shirdi. Let's go meet this holy man." Mirwan agreed, although neither Mirwan nor Khodadad knew where Shirdi was. Mirwan was insistent they find it. They departed. When they reached the village of Shirdi, they encountered a roadblock of stick wielding villagers who informed them that Sai Baba was in a foul temper and had stopped giving darshan. "We have come to see Sai Baba," said Khodu. "Let us pass." "You cannot see Sai Baba," the villagers informed them. "No one can see him. He has given instructions that no one should come for his darshan today. Go back from where you came." Khodu pleaded, "We have come all the way from Pune. We must meet Sai Baba. Please understand." The villagers refused to listen to Khodu's pleas, saying, "We must obey our master's instructions. We cannot allow anyone to pass." Khodu turned to Mirwan and said, "It looks like we will have to go back." But Mirwan preferred to wait and sat down under a tree. "You can go back if you like," he told Khodu, "but I have come to see the Sai, and I will." They spent the night under the tree in spite of the warnings of the villagers. It was winter time and Khodu shivered in the bitter cold. The next morning, they awakened and had hot tea at a nearby vendor, but there was no word from Sai Baba, and the villagers still refused to let them pass. In the afternoon, word came, "Sai Baba is calling you two to his mosque." The villagers said, "But he is still in a bad mood." They warned, "Be careful." Sai Baba was then 77 years old. Dressed in a white kafni, he had a white beard and a head of snow white hair. He was seated in his mosque, Dwarkamai Masjid, and pointing to Khodu, said, "I want to see that fellow only." Khodu nervously walked up and bowed at Sai Baba's feet, and when he did, the old fakir slapped him on the back so hard that it knocked the breath out of him. Khodu was startled, and then Sai Baba inquired, "Who is your friend? What does he want?" "His name is Merwan, Merwan Sheriyar Irani. He is very devout and eagerly desires your darshan, Holy One. Hazrat Baba Jan of Pune has told us about you." "No, I won't allow him to come," Sai Baba said. Looking at Khodu, he continued, "Give me all your money." Khodu did, and then Sai Baba told him to leave. Khodu left and reported to Merwan, who shook his head and said, "Let us just wait. I must see him, and I will." Later, Sai Baba was on his way to Lendi, answering the call of nature in a field, followed by a large procession that included a band playing music. The atmosphere was joyful, though at the same time solemn with reverence. Contrary to what Khodu had said, Sai Baba now appeared to be in a very good mood. As Sai Baba was about to pass them, Mirwan prostrated himself on the ground in front of Sai Baba's feet in Sashtang Namaskar. Seeing Mirwan lying before him on the ground, Sai Baba, in a deep voice as if rising from the depths of the ocean, uttered one majestic word, "Parvardigar." The ways of the Sadguru are wonderful indeed, but to the ignorant, they are always unintelligible. Sai Baba's holy word bestowed infinite power upon Mirwan. The moment Sai Baba spoke, Mirwan became all powerful. Age observed, when Khodu and Mirwan had arrived in Shirdi, the air was still. There was no movement in the trees. The sky was grey and the atmosphere solemn. But when Sai Baba proclaimed Parvardigar, a warm breeze arose and sunlight broke through the clouds. The branches of the trees began swaying. as if dancing in the presence of Almighty God and his reflection. Everything in nature and in the universe seemed in sudden harmony, as if affirming Merwan is God. Those who surrounded Sai Baba were astonished at the sudden change in his mood. When the lengthy procession had started, the master had been severe. Now he was luminous, beaming as if the sun had descended, taken form, and stood smiling before him. No one except Sai Baba and Merwan knew the reason why. The message Sai Baba delivered, Merwan alone could understand. After Merwan had risen, he and Khodu slowly walked away as the proclamation of Parvardigar fell twice more from Sai Baba's lips. Age bowed to Merwan, the ancient one. But age is ever powerless to sing the praises of Parvardigar unless enabled by him to do so. Age had to wait some years more to reveal Merwan's divine presence among humanity. Merwan felt drawn to visit an old Hindu temple on the outskirts of the village, where they were informed Sai Baba's chief disciple was staying. It was the Khandoba temple where Upasni Maharaj lived. Upasni was seated on its steps, naked and virtually as thin as a skeleton. As Merwan approached, Upasni picked up a stone, stood up, and threw it with all his strength at Merwan, striking him on the forehead exactly on the spot where Babajan had kissed him. The force of that holy blow was so strong it drew blood and left a permanent scar on Merwan's forehead. What sort of strange reception was this? Age wondered. He whom Sai Baba addressed as Parvardigar has been struck with a rock by Upasni. Yet, what is there to be surprised at? Just look at Merwan. With the impact of the blow, his eyes have begun to show more gross consciousness of the world. Merwan had been divinely absorbed in his own godhood and had very little normal consciousness of the world around him since Babajan had kissed him nearly 2 years before. With the wound from the stone thrown by Upasni Maharaj, Merwan's worldly consciousness was to gradually increase and eventually return completely, though the process was to take nearly 7 years. Age noted silently. Stone, the grossest form of worldly manifestation, became the medium to bring the God man back to gross consciousness. After being struck by the stone, Merwan, instead of running away in fright, walked closer to Upasni Maharaj. Upasni took Merwan alone inside his temple, inhabited by snakes and scorpions, while Khodu stood some distance away, startled by what he had witnessed. Khodu could not understand why this was happening. He had been bewildered by Sai Baba's words, and now this naked yogi had hit Merwan with a stone. Merwan and Upasni were together inside the temple, but Khodu dared not go near it or interrupt them. He could do nothing but wait. Khodu was particularly concerned about what Mimo would say if something happened to Merwan. He was worried that she was going to blame him for taking Merwan to visit Sai Baba. Now Merwan was wounded and bleeding, and if he was seriously hurt, Khodu knew he would have to face Mimo's temper. As hour after hour passed and Merwan did not emerge from the temple, Khodu became more and more worried and frightened about his friend. Night came, and shivering in the bitter cold, Khodu waited near the temple. Is Merwan hurt? He wondered. Has his wound stopped bleeding? What is happening in there? Age tried to reassure him. Oh, Khodu, don't use your intellect. Later you will understand it. Your Langoti Dost has now become your father, and you will have to stay with him and surrender everything at his feet. Merwan has now contacted all 5 perfect masters, and he himself is God. But we are impatient for him to begin his mission and reveal his coming to the world. Another day and night passed, and Khodu grew increasingly anxious. Finally, after 2 days and nights, Merwan came out of the temple in the morning with Upasni at his side. Khodu was greatly relieved to see that Merwan was seemingly well, though he did not know how he was going to explain the deep wound on Merwan's forehead to Mimo. Upasni said to Khodu, "Take care of your friend. Make certain you see that he gets back to Pune safely." Khodu had given all his money to Sai Baba and was relieved to find that Mirwan had some. When they reached Pune, Khodu took Mirwan to his house and had his wound cleaned and bandaged. Then Khodu took Mirwan to Bhopla house and made some excuse to Mimo about Mirwan falling and injuring his head. Mimo accepted the story that Mirwan had hurt his head by accident. However, after some months, she blamed Khodu for Mirwan's involvement with Upasni Maharaj and would not tolerate Khodu's presence in her house. Settled back in Pune, Mirwan continued his regular visits to Babajan, staying by her side for at least 2 or 3 hours every night. Although Babajan had a mysterious, indirect way of speaking, making cryptic remarks that were confusing to a listener, she would talk to Mirwan in a normal manner and once even told him in detail about her early life in Balochistan. It was also rare for Babajan to allow anyone to touch her person, even to bow at her feet or kiss her hand, yet she would tell Mirwan to scratch or massage her back during the hours he was with her. When she would mutter, "Enough," he would stop and depart for home around midnight. By that time, Mirwan's fingers were so cramped it would be difficult for him to straighten them. Mirwan would lie in bed, but his eyes would remain wide open. He still was not sleeping. By 4 o'clock in the morning, he would be up, walking about the house. As dawn rose over the city of Pune, he would start melodiously singing the Zoroastrian monajats, as he had done throughout his childhood. As Mirwan was coming down to regain his human consciousness, he started eating twice a day and took either tea or coffee in the morning. The quantity of food he consumed, however, was still insufficient to sustain a normal man. Naturally, his mother was quite happy that he had started eating something regularly, though she was concerned about his weight. Once a month, Mirwan would travel to Shirdi to meet Sai Baba for a few moments, then stay with Upasni Maharaj at the Khandoba temple for a few days. At times, he would have Behramji accompany him. At other times, Khodu would join him. Jamshed also accompanied Mirwan to Shirdi once. However, he always stayed alone with Upasni in the temple. During Mirwan's visits, Upasni Maharaj revealed in detail to him about Zoroaster's life, the mission, and divinity of the Persian prophet. According to the teachings of the Zoroastrian priests, Zoroaster was one of the many messengers of God. Upasni explained that the Zoroastrian rites and ceremonies had little to do with Zoroaster's true mission. From the esoteric knowledge passed down by Upasni, Mirwan now accepted Zoroaster to be the avatar, the incarnation of God Himself in human form. In this respect, Mirwan would later repeat this couplet from Kabir: "Both Guru and Govind stand before you. To whom should you bow? Bow to the Guru's grace, which has shown you Govind." Naturally, when Mirwan tried to convey these spiritual truths to his Parsi and Irani friends, relatives, and neighbors, they were taken aback and disturbed by these esoteric conceptions of the founder of their religion. The local Zoroastrian priests were particularly disturbed by Mirwan's declarations. Although Mirwan was beginning to regain a slight semblance of his normal human consciousness, he was able to recognize only his immediate surroundings. The power of the song within motivated him. By the divine will, he moved through life like an automaton, though to strangers he appeared and acted reasonably normal. Finding Merwan more like his old self, Mimo pressed him again to find a job. Merwan did not like the idea. However, against his wishes and because of her pressure, he accepted a clerical position with a well established brick contractor in Pune. One day, Merwan was seated beside the driver in his employer's automobile. The driver accidentally struck an old woman crossing the street. The contractor, who was seated in the back, told the driver to proceed and not to stop. Since a number of persons recognized the car, the contractor was soon arrested and summoned to court the next day. Merwan was also summoned. Waiting in the courtroom, the contractor told Merwan, "When it is your turn to testify, deny the incident and claim we were driving elsewhere at the time." Merwan replied, "I cannot do that. It would be a lie." When he took the stand, he told the truth. The contractor was worried, but the judge ruled that it had not been solely the driver's fault, but fined the contractor a sum of rupees 200 for not reporting the accident. After a few days, Merwan was told by the owner to prepare false invoices, which he refused to do. He became upset at the man's dishonesty, tore up the papers, and informed his employer, "I cannot work for you anymore." Thus ended his short employment with the brick contractor, and his mother could not object. For a time, Merwan began teaching English to a young Zoroastrian priest named Mobed Sahib at the Khorshedwadi fire temple. They would sit together from 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon and often engage in discussions about religious matters. At first, Merwan refused to accept any payment, but the priest insisted. Within a few months, the priest was able to read and write basic English. After some time, wishing only the best for him, Mimo pressed Merwan again to find another job, and he was accepted as a school teacher at Nargol village in Gujarat. He was hired to teach two subjects, English and Persian, to secondary high school students. His salary was rupees 200 per month, and he would send half of it home to his mother. But this teaching job lasted for only a few months. Bailey described Merwan's time there as follows. For whatever short period he was there, Merwan taught his students with great love and care, and won the hearts of all. No one could match his method of teaching, keeping the students engrossed and engaged, and he was highly praised by all for his dedication to the job. During and after school hours, as was customary, he would always be addressed by the students as Sir. His cleverness, joyous nature, and ever smiling happy countenance captured the minds and hearts of everyone. He was not only a favorite of the students but of the other teachers and staff as well. He would also take an active part in all games and sports, and would never miss an opportunity to talk on spiritual matters. He would offer advice, gather people in a corner, and talk about God in a friendly, amiable manner. Similarly, he would recite his poems or Urdu couplets and regale the students. While leaving Nargol, a large crowd of students came to the railway station and offered him garlands and bouquets in farewell. Even after he ceased to be their teacher, for a very long time the students continued to remain in touch with him through letters and requested him again and again to return. It was during this period of Merwan's teaching job at Nargol village that he originated the divine theme chart, which was explained and published 27 years later at a gathering in Mehrabad in 1943. Refer to Meher Baba, God Speaks, Dodd Mead, 1955, page 241 to 243, for a full description of the chart. Upon Merwan's return to Pune, Mimo again tried to find some steady employment for her son. She told Bobo that the sooner Merwan became involved with a steady job, the better he would feel, and the sooner his mental distress would be alleviated. His mother would not leave him alone or give him a moment's relief about getting a job. This went on every day, and her pestering was a constant irritation to Merwan. Whenever Merwan would go to Shirdi to visit Upasni Maharaj, he would not tell his mother, or there would be a quarrel between them. He would confide in his maternal aunt, Pila Masi, who loved him immensely. When Merwan was a teenager, Memo had a baby, Adi, to look after, and she did not like it if Mirwan brought a lot of friends to the house. Pila Masi, on the other hand, loved to have Mirwan bring his companions to her home, and they would come and gather on the carpet, play cards or draughts, and narrate stories about Hindu and Muslim perfect masters, saints, and miracles until late in the evening. Pila Masi and her husband Masaji had a large compound around the house where Mirwan and his friends often played cricket. It was here where Mirwan and his friends had rehearsed their plays also. If Mirwan missed coming to her house for even one day, Pila Masi would become worried. Why hasn't Mirwan come today? She would wonder, something must be wrong. Therefore, whenever Mirwan would leave Pune for Shirdi, he would inform his aunt where he was going, telling her not to worry and adding that he would see her as soon as he returned. Consequently, only Pila Masi would know of Mirwan's whereabouts when he was not in Pune. When he would return from Shirdi, he would bring prasad for her from Upasni Maharaj. One time, Mirwan told his mother he was going to Bombay to visit Jamshed. Instead, he took a bus to Shirdi and stayed with Upasni Maharaj. Mimo became suspicious and pestered her sister to tell her where Mirwan had really gone, but Pila Masi feigned ignorance. As mentioned, Jal, Mirwan's younger brother, acted as a spy for their mother. When Mirwan and Jal were boys, Jal would dutifully report in detail to Mimo whatever went on at Pila Masi's house. On this occasion, Jal had heard Mirwan tell Pila Masi of his plans to go to Shirdi. It was because of Jal that Mimo knew fully well that Mirwan was not in Bombay. Mimo was upset with her sister for not telling her where Mirwan had gone, and she was also upset with Mirwan for deceiving her. Upon his return, she scolded Mirwan, I'm telling you for the 100th time, get a job and keep it. Start thinking of your future. Start thinking about earning a livelihood. Start thinking about getting married. Stop wasting your life going here and there to saints and holy men. Do you understand me? Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? At this time, the First World War was in full force, and Mirwan was so annoyed by his mother's constant badgering that he told her, All right, Mimo, I have decided to join the army. I'm going to fight in the war. Hearing this, Mimo became terribly anxious and said, Oh no, you're not. You're not going to war. You will stay home here in Pune. For some days, this ploy worked and Mirwan was left in peace. Pila Masi and Masaji had two children, one son named Aspandier, later nicknamed Pendu, and a daughter, Naja. Two other children, Mehra and Gustad, had died. The entire family became devoted to Mirwan, not because he was their relative, but because of his alluring, dynamic personality. Mirwan's singing voice, as mentioned, was superb. His sweet songs delighted his family and neighbors, who would look forward to hearing him early each morning. Mirwan's voice had a special quality. It was full of feeling. He sang with all his heart. Whoever heard him felt the meaning of the words of the prayers. His voice stirred their spirits, urging them to love God. Belly wrote, Mirwan's voice carried like waves rising out of the ocean, and all things would merge with its sound. When Pila Masi and her family were living nearby, Aspandiar also recalled, In my childhood, Baba used to sing Persian poems in praise of God very loudly at the crack of dawn. Every morning at 5 a.m., I remember hearing his voice as I was sleeping in my bed. None in the neighborhood would complain about it disturbing their sleep because they liked the song and his voice. They would say, "Ah, Merwan is singing." Pila Masi had asked her nephew Merwan to teach her children the Zoroastrian prayers and how to tie the sacred kusti around their waist each morning, which he did. A kusti is a thick thread that Zoroastrian wrap and knot in a certain manner around their waist. It is sacred in their religion because it symbolizes tying oneself to God. Its deeper meaning probably has to do with the winding and unwinding of sanskaras. Aspandir and Naja loved cousin Mirwan so deeply that once, as a boy, Aspandir thought wistfully how wonderful it would be if Mirwan were Zoroaster. Mirwan is so loving like him. He sings such beautiful prayers and his nature is so kind. I wish he were Zoroaster. Mimo and Pila's brother, Mirwan's maternal uncle, Rustam Mama, was a big, strapping fellow. He was working in theatre, and he and his wife, Piroja Mami, had relocated to Calcutta, where there was an active Parsi theatre scene. The couple was childless, and during 1916, Mimo sent Mirwan to stay with his aunt and uncle for a change of scenery and to improve his disposition. Unfortunately, Mirwan was not at ease in Calcutta and felt uncomfortable away from his friends. One day, however, a prominent theatrical associate of Rustam Mama's named Kavis P. Khatao 59 met Mirwan and felt extremely drawn to him. Khatao was an actor and the owner director of the Alfred Theatrical Company, which had shifted its base of operations from Bombay to Calcutta some years previously. The company also regularly toured the north of India giving dramatic performances. Mr. Khatao invited Mirwan to stay at his home, but Mirwan refused. Kavas offered Mirwan a job with the company. Mirwan politely told Mr. Khatao, "Sir, I'm not looking for a job. I will treat you like a son," Kavas replied. "Whatever conditions and wages you want, I will meet. Don't refuse me." Mirwan answered, "Please don't press me any further about this." Nevertheless, Kavas persisted. After staying 3 months in Calcutta, Mirwan returned to Pune. Meanwhile, Rustam Mama had written his sister Mimo about Mr. Khatao's interest in Mirwan and the job he had offered that Mirwan had refused. Consequently, when Mirwan arrived home, he was met with a renewed onslaught of lectures from his mother about his future. Mimo was convinced that her son was wasting his life. At her insistence, Mirwan had no choice but to write Mr. Khatao and accept the position with his theatrical company. Mirwan soon went back to Calcutta. His first assignment was as tour manager to travel with the actors to Lahore in northern India, now Pakistan, where they would be staging a Hindi play, Ramayana. Merwan could not forget his friends in Pune, however, especially Behramji, with whom he would frequently correspond. In one such letter, he wrote, "Dear Behramji, circumstances compel me to do things which I do not like to do. I am obliged to eat all sorts of things that I have no taste for and keep myself dressed in clothes I have no desire to wear. Oh God, what entanglements! What sort of bondage is this?" Strangely enough, though, within a few months after Mirwan mailed this letter, Kavas Khatao died in Lahore on 16th August 1916 during an operation for kidney stones, and the company was temporarily disbanded. Mirwan happily returned to Pune, and this time his mother could not reprimand him for either quitting or being fired. Rustam Mama and Piroja Mami later moved from Calcutta to Bombay, where Rustam became an actor in the Parsi Theatrical Company and was known as Rustam D. Poonawala. He also worked as an assistant director for the Imperial Film Company. From the initial meetings with Sai Baba and Upasni Maharaj in 1915, Mirwan started a grim habit which was to last the entire 7 years of his coming down to normal consciousness. Every day, Mirwan would regularly strike his forehead on the stone floor of his room for hours. Some days in the afternoon, between 1 and 5 o'clock, he would go to the Golibar area of Pune or to the isolated Pataleshwar cave temple. At the Tower of Silence, sitting under a tree, he would continue this gruesome ritual, knocking his forehead on a rock or against a stone wall. He was not merely tapping his head on the stone surface, but pounding and pounding his brow upon it with full force, always inflicting a bloody wound.